talk about dependencies, we have to talk on the US. We have to talk about three types of dependencies. The first dependencies is in terms of capabilities, and here I'm mentioning human capabilities. We know that we have more or less 100,000 soldiers, US soldiers on the European soil. And the second capability dependency is on material. Indeed, critical material that we still are dependent on the US. And especially when it comes to a few strategic enablers, such as, air-to-air airlift, when it comes to defense, security, air defense systems, also that we have critical capabilities dependencies when it comes to everything which is intelligence. The second type of dependency we have is when it comes to operational command. Indeed, NATO is run by SACEUR, and we know that there is a dependency there on the operational command, and there is no at the moment solution or action taken to make this evolve. A dependency of Europeans within on the US at the moment is maybe a bit more difficult to tackle in the short term because it's a psychological dependency.
Mr. President, how would it not be a war crime to strike Iran's bridges and power plants?
Because they killed 45,000 people in the last month, more than that. I think it could be as much as 60. They kill protesters, they're animals. And we have to stop them, and we can't let them have a nuclear weapon. Very simple.
I would answer yes or no.
We all support and defend the Constitution of the United States.
You know what? I'm not going to waste my time anymore. You're not worthy of my attention or my questions. You're an embarrassment to this country. You're unfit to lead. And there's been bipartisan members of Congress that have called for your resignation. You should just get the hell out and let somebody competently lead this department.
Mr. Chairman, do we not have any decorum in here?
Thank you.
Well, hello, that's me again. Today is April 7th, 2026. It is Tuesday, last time I checked. So, essentially what is presented to you in the beginning of this video, this video introduction with Mr. Hexet, with Mr. Trump, and with this analyst from France and things of this nature. These are the not symptoms, these are strong indications, let's put it this way, manifestations, in fact, of the complete decomposition of the Western civilization and complete seizing of the political system of the United States in operating in a proper manner. And we have a madman actually at the helm, well, no, not a lone madman. And if that hasn't been enough, here are the people in Iran who Mr. Trump calls animals. So that basically begins to reek very much of the Third Reich and all this Plan Ost, for example, subhumans. Well, not only Jews, I mean, forget about that only thing. There were Jews, there were Slavs, all kinds of Slavs, Russians, Poles, what have you. All of them have been subhumans. So they were gypsies, also subhumans. So, and this is what Mr. Trump now begins to, offer as the, political, so to speak, statement for the public, which obviously elected him for things which are completely opposite. But this is what you would expect from the man who is completely controlled by Israel, and he is narcissist, he is covered, and United States, essentially Washington, D.C., is infested with this kind of people. United States, as I already stated, is not sovereign country. It is the country which is totally controlled by Israel lobby, and they, as you saw yourself in Gaza, they don't care. They don't care if American boys and girls are going there and they will die there. In Iran, for example, obviously fighting for Israel. And so, Mr. Trump, tops this off with yet another stunning, so to speak, admission. It's, oh, good Lord. That's what he promises. the man is completely unhinged, and now we have to be talking, obviously, about the possibility of the 25th Amendment. Look at this. This is what he promises today. A whole civilization will die tonight, never to be brought back again. I don't want that to happen, but it probably will. However, now that we have complete and total regime change, where different, smart, and less radicalized minds prevail, maybe something revolutionary, wonderful can happen. Who knows? We will find out tonight one of the most important moments in the long and complex history of the world. 47 years of extortion, corruption, and death will finally end. God bless the great people of Iran. This is a madman writing this, and the man who completely lost any touch with the reality. And yeah, especially when you look attentively at how Mark Levin, one of the biggest talking heads for Israel, they call him for some reason conservative. He treats Trump as the Shabbos boy. I mean, he is just the guy has no will, he has no principles, and if anybody asks themselves why it is so, it is a combination of factors. And so we're gonna go absolutely next level, apart from the embarrassment of Pete Hegseth, who is never graduated in his mentality, let alone knowledge beyond the NCO level. He doesn't understand what strategy is, and all his actually military education, apart from the fraudulent ROTC program, which do not prepare real officers for the modern warfare, let alone understanding of the operational and strategic realities. We have the guy who probably he drew all his military knowledge from his police, essentially police deployment in Afghanistan, and of course from Schofield Bible. That's pretty much these guys believe. Actually, in many respects, this is it's a cultural phenomenon in the United States. They really consult themselves with the Bible. And if you think that it's just Pete Hegseth, I want to remind you, for those people who still do not remember, that during the Dubuya, two presidential terms, during which 9/11 happened, and then, of course, the so-called Iraqi freedom unfolded in 2003, which turned out to be, in the end, a disaster. His morning briefings of Mr. Bush Jr. have been presented to him, including, in a written form on the paper, on the stationery, which had as the headline of the quotes from the Bible. If you think that this is the proper way to conduct the actually very secular policy, let alone develop any kind of the strategy, which of course has to involve considerations about the religiosity and faith of people, then I have a bridge to sell you, cash only. And so we have now, well, even UK media are beginning to basically state things like this. I mean, this is the Guardian, and this is what we have in terms of opinion they offered just yesterday, I believe, that Trump's chaotic war on Iran has dragged it into its sixth week because he is fighting an adversary he doesn't understand. This is critical. Washington in general is not designed, the clockwork in Washington is not designed to understand anything. It is absolutely, basically, one huge laundromat today. And when you ask any people who have any semblance of the common sense, let alone professional knowledge, like it happened with the actually chief of staff of the U.S. Army, Randy George, and who is now in retirement, if you have this knowledge, it should not apply. You may not apply, because in the end, this is not what is this all about. This is what Israel actually and Israeli lobby did to United States. And yes, I do not want to even use the famous H.L. Mencken's quote about that. Essentially, the White House in the end, will be adorned by the downright moron. Trump is not just moron, which he actually is. Many people, for some reason, think that if he was had seven or whatever, six bankruptcies, is somehow indicative of his genius. Obviously not, but because practice is practical empirical evidence is there quite to the contrary. What we have now is that it's not just moron, he's dangerous. And he's dangerous also because he is controlled by the power which is absolutely not acting in the interest of the United States. It is acting in the interest of Israel. And guess what? Look how Israel kind of slightly is being removed from the agenda by especially legacy media. They don't want to basically rotate that many news about Israel, which is completely defenseless. It was beaten into the bloody pulp, and now we have the situation where we have the IDF stuck in the South Levant, and even if to trim a little bit of the data from which is coming from Hezbollah, but yeah, they lost the whole armor brigade there. I mean, blown up, destroyed, because they talk about something like on the order of 134 Merkava tanks, not counting their personnel, which have been blown up there. And yeah, when you look attentively at those Merkavas, which are going against the Hezbollah positions in southern Levant, one thing and one question immediately pops in mind. What about Mangals? What about those anti-drone, at least basic protection? No, you have those Merkavas which just go with the, bold turrets and thinking because they are a chosen nation, they probably not gonna get hurt. Their God, whatever their God is probably gonna protect them. And then, of course, they meet all kinds of nasty things like Cornet, which doesn't care how good your tank is. It will blow your turret away. Or then you have drones, which Hezbollah has in just very good numbers, and they just destroy your tanks. And the result is, what is that? A recklessness? No, it's incompetence. And IDF, well, if you take a look attentively what they committed in Gaza, you have to understand that what has been done in Gaza, it was genocide. It was atrocity on the industrial scale. And this was a plain simple Nazism. It was, they turned Gaza essentially into concentration camp. So much for survivors of Holocaust. So, what do we have then? So we have a situation with the, obviously, good Lord, this so-called search and rescue operation in Iran. And so many people really already spoke about this, that they, have to consider that essentially the government of US government version of the events is not exactly true, and there are all versions. Let me put it this way. I'm professional enough, no, I'm not great professional, but I'm professional enough to understand that I hate speculations. I know only one thing. There are so many holes in the this version of the events presented by Trump, Hexet, and the Mr. Ratcliffe, the basically big honcho, the director of the CIA. People actually openly laugh at it now because it just doesn't add up. But there is one thing which I want to show you, which kind of explains to you why I have doubts. And you know what? It's not just the holes in the basically the parts of the fuselage and wings of the those AC-130Js. And no, this is this photograph, which is I want to show it to you here. It is look at this. As you can see yourself, this is the more highly likely the boom. It could be the leading edge, but it doesn't look like it. Looks more like a boom of the because you don't put the U.S. Army on the leading edge. So it's the boom of this AH-6 Little Bird helicopters, which one of the whatever the C-130Js was carrying. That means if you especially take a look, even with the whatever the basically type of the lensing, if you wish, was used while doing showing this photograph, it was fairly far away from the otherwise disastrous situation with those burned down, destroyed C-130Js. And this is the boom from those one of those helicopters. As you can see yourself, it has definitely the holes from the fire, external fire, or by the small arms, and probably even by the fairly large caliber machine gun. And that means that helicopter had been taken out. There was no collision of those. There's new version that allegedly those two C-130s collided with each other. No, it obviously was taken out, maybe even was used. But as you can see yourself, it was, well, it exploded. And here it is. This is one thing which tells you that it was a very serious firefight there. And the real facts of this so-called operation, we will not know for a long time. And I am, as I already stated, professional enough not to sit here and speculate, providing one version after another. There could be very many versions, believe me. But it definitely didn't go as planned. And whatever they did, and Iran is kind of not mum. And again, you have to understand, Mr. Radcliffe, all this basically coteria, Trump's coteria, and the neocons, rabid, basically war criminals, many of them are. They know only PR. They really do not know. The CIA doesn't know how to spy anymore. It doesn't have the qualified cadres to really understand what is going on, and they do not study, as even Guardian says. Mr. Trump, obviously collective Trump, not only himself. Trump himself probably doesn't even understand the basic facts on the ground, is that they do not understand what they're dealing with. They never did. And here is the issue which I want to stress again, and I will be speaking about it ad nauseam. Look at the special military operation. Look at who planned it. Look what they thought about Russia and Mr. Putin and what have you. Those people had no clue. And yeah, one of the reasons they don't have clue in this particular case when we talk about special military operation, because they don't have real Russian actually scholars in United States. None. Zero. And don't give me this that John Mersheimer knows anything about Russia. He knows zilch about it. He doesn't know anything about warfare, and that goes across the board, including those people who in the United States otherwise would be called even the realists, geopolitical realists. They're not realists. They don't have a clue about anything when they deal anything outside the borders of the United States, and even they themselves do not understand what actually United States has become in the last 30 years, because it completely degenerated in every single respect: industrial, political, cultural, military. Military, it never was what it tried to present itself to be. Let's start with this. And so, as the result, we have this essentially catastrophe which is unfolding in political and cultural and social life in the United States. Economically, it's horrendous. And then we have the situation which is the Trump administration and the United States is choked. Does it mean that American soldiers are bad? No. They're not the best in the world, but they're good enough. There are many courageous, and there are many professional people there who, well, they have, some of them have balls of steel. So, but it doesn't make U.S. military as a system very effective. And we saw when we talk about the Strait of Hormuz, and we're talking about, for example, U.S. Navy, Iran claims again, don't forget, you cannot take anything just, as it is reported today, especially from the, legacy media and even alternative media who do not have a clear picture either. I don't, but I try to figure it out from the point of view of the political trends and dynamics. And evidently, Iran made one of those Marine Expeditionary Unit on the LHD, one of these amphibious assault ships, just move away deep into the Indian Ocean because it is threatened by the essentially anti-shipping missiles, and Iran still can launch long-range drones at it. even just for the matter of deterrence, not necessarily directly attacking it. So we have the complete reshaping of the not just world order in at large. Obviously, we understand this. The civilizational, essentially, new point of bifurcation, if you wish. So, but militarily, it's completely different military, and you saw yourself that United States literally can do nothing because it has an obsolete table of equipment and organization. It has extremely overrated, extremely overpriced assets which cannot sustain, well, the basic physics and mathematics of the Salva model, which, of course, Salva model being discrete model, explaining the missile combat, missile exchange. And yeah, it has everything to do with air defense, which doesn't work. It has everything to do with those large, very slow for the anti-shipping missiles, moving targets. And so the whole thing is just absolutely, it's catastrophe for Trump administration. And if that hasn't been enough, so let's take a look at the immediate results. No matter how they speculate, no matter what he tries to do desperately at that, as you can see yourself, it's the price of oil today is, well, look at this. And this is oil price. Make no mistake. It is also the essentially the website which represent the speculators and bunch of the morons who repeat all kinds of the basically gospel, which is all fake, from the all kinds of the Wall Street and whatever the stock exchanges. And here you see yourself that even if you take a look at Brent crude, which is about 30 minutes ago was trading. This is paper. Make no mistake. It's $111. Why it is important? If you take a look at also when breaking news, the International Energy Agency chief, the current energy crisis worse than 1973, 1979, and 2022 combined. Yes, it is much worse because it's civilizational, and United States is being completely removed from the self-proclaimed status of hegemon, which actually it never was, primarily through the blackmail and threat of the military action by the military, which really cannot put it mildly, so help to put it politely, about the United States situation with the economy or whatever the problems it has. So what we have here is a very interesting moment, which also contradicts this oil price, which just only adds to the my argument, and it buttresses it essentially that you cannot even to trust those numbers, because Brent, as you can see yourself, was trading half an hour ago at 111. It's a paper. Reality is, just even Bloomberg reports it a few hours back, because now it's probably grew even more. The price of Russian Urals oil has risen to a maximum in 13 years. The cost of Russian oil exceeds now $116 per barrel, which was the highest since 2013. This happened against the backdrop of rising world oil prices due to the aggravation of the conflict in the Middle East. The price of Urals oil, which is exported from Russian port of Primorsk on the Baltic, reached 116.05 per barrel. Bloomberg, citing data from the British price agency Argus Media on April 2, writes that the cost has reached a 13-year-old high. And by now, it's much higher than that. And again, it's like in circle. It moves us back to what is happening in terms of this crazy, absolutely proceedings in the United States. So, and this is Guardian. Again, I'm going back to Guardian. Unhinged madman. U.S. politicians react to Trump's expletive-laden threat to Iran. Remember about this FU thing? We'll talk about this. And it's not just Marjorie Taylor Greene or Bernie Sanders, who is, he is a fraud, completely sold out his soul long time ago. But it's also from the, people like Jake Akingsloss, a Democratic representative and U.S. Marine Corps veteran, told Fox News Sunday. Iran recognizes that. In fact, their control over the strait is even more strategically vital to them than the development of the nuclear weapon. Strategically, this war has been a failure, he added. That explains to you that, well, basically that is why they are panicking, because the war is lost and nothing they can do to unplug, essentially, the Strait of Hormuz. And now we have the, again, threat of the Bab el-Mandeb and Red Sea being closed. That will be catastrophe on such scale that the world hasn't seen before. And you have to keep in mind what is happening with all that. This has a profound ramifications. We already feel them. If people don't know, I mean, the state of Washington, it's close to $6. Actually, the diesel is already, depending on the way you drive, it's a 6 plus something. Los Angeles, we know that it has what, $9 per gallon. So yeah, and it is what generally accepted truism that once your overall price of per gallon reaches average over all the United States around $5, the economy ceases to operate properly. We are getting there. This is what MAGA agenda by Trump hasn't promised other people who voted for Trump, me included. Actually, he delivered everything opposite. He sold country to the Israel completely, that it now completely is controlled politically by Israel and Israeli lobby. And nothing. Economically, it's ruinous for the United States. And in terms of, obviously, Europe, as you heard yourself, this funny boy from France, evidently that's the type of the analysts they have in France, admits that Europe is completely dependent on the United States, especially militarily. Yeah, we know that. I wrote 4 books on it. They are chihuahuas. Nothing they can do about it except, obviously, increasing capitalization of the rain metal or what have you. So, not going to help them. And that is the whole other story. So, where does it leave us with all that? How to put it? Even New York Times, right? And that is the outcome, because I can tell you one thing: special military operation, for example, it brought Russia back into the global superpower. Not that it hasn't been before. Russia was always either potentially or kinetically really global superpower. But starting from the Ukrainian crisis in 2014, 2015, 2014, remember I wrote that the West doesn't even know that it's already lost, especially the United States, because they are incompetent. They're incompetent across the board. You look at those things, what they say and pronounce, it's just amateurs, So New York Times says that the war is turning Iran into a major world power. Oh, absolutely. Because unlike with the special military operation, where the United States actually is hiding behind the backs of the cannon fodder of Ukraine, Iran actually forced the United States to go head to head together with Israel, this little chihuahua which thinks itself global power. And so the result was predictable, as was predicted. Well, I'm sorry to say it, and not being unnecessarily humble. I called it a long time ago. So, because, normal people do not look at the capitalization or the shares of the stock market. Normal people look at the actual numbers. They look at the facts and they look at the dynamics, which, of course, some of the dynamics, which is military dynamics, involves very many complex things which you have to study in military academies, which provide you with the usually engineering degree, which is graduate degree, and you have the bachelor's in the military science. That's, for example, what I have, and that's what majority of people in Russian military have. So you have. That's why you have the general staff, and you have people at the scale of Mr. Gerasimov or Mr. Rudskoy, who is the head of the main chief directorate, chief operational directorate. So you look at those things, totally different, basically leagues, especially when you compare it to Pete Hegseth. And I agree, as much as I don't like Democratic Party, the congressman was absolutely correct. He's an embarrassment. But that's who Trump needs, and that's who AIPAC pushed on him. And That's what we have. We have Israeli government essentially running this country. There is this certain share strata of the so-called Americans who are heretics essentially. They who believe all this Scofield Bible crap, and their loyalty is to Israel, not to the United States. They don't care how many American boys and girls will die for Israel, as long as they will be, according to their basically heresy, they will be transported when the hell breaks loose here on earth. They will be transported to paradise. I do not want to comment on this anymore. So let's go back to a little bit to the special military operation, because obviously I try to keep it my videos, as you know, about 35 minutes. But I want to state about this. Last time when I was talking about this Giatzint 152 millimeter self-propelled gun, there were actually doubts in people in the comments who said, "Oh, why do you call it genocide? It's Hyacinth, Hyacinth, it is Hyacinth, but." Since the moment it was actually accepted for the as the front line, essentially artillery system in Soviet army, it already was called genocide. It's a joking name for the Hyacinth, and that's how it's called, genocide. And it continues to wreak havoc on together with all other self-propelled guns, such as obviously more sophisticated Star S, and it continues to wreak havoc on the Ukrainian positions. And if you take a look today at today's tally, it's now traditional. As you can see yourself, this is today's tally. Pretty much slaughterhouse works non-stop, and it's again around 1300 today. So, and they will be probably recruiting. They are already recruiting women, but for now they're not forced. But soon they probably will be forcing them, the same as that. That's what is called the bussification. So, and if we take a look at Konstantinovka, you can see yourself, Konstantinovka is being pummeled. It's a very significant town. It's city, actually, which even by 2022 had the population of around 80,000 people. And if you take a look now on the proceedings inside Konstantinovka and the map of the Konstantinovka, you can see yourself that, doesn't look good for Ukrainian defenses there, because Russians are surrounding. Well, it's traditional Russian thing. You know what? Get to the pocket, snip it, and then destroy whatever is left. As you can see yourself, the fight is deep inside Konstantinovka, and again, it's just a matter of how fast Russians will liberate it, because there is no need to rush. It's all about saving the lives of Russian personnel, and there is no, as I already stated many times, and for those people who just join my channel, and there are some, and who for the first time discovered what I am trying to produce here, is that I will repeat again. In 2022, the chief of the general staff of Russian Ministry of Defense and obviously the Minister of Defense, they were told by people like Putin and other members of the Security Council in Russia, this most strategic, the most important organ of the governance and control of Russia, that, I repeat, they untied Mr. Gerasimov and the Russian armed forces from the calendar. They said, do it as long and as the way you want it. So we are not, our task is to provide you with the geopolitical framework, which allows you to do it calmly and saving as many Russian personnel as possible. And that was actually confirmed by Mr. Putin. He said, we don't need to go and do those big red arrow offenses, which we could. What's the point? I mean, we need to move slowly and to remove not only physically annihilating the armed forces of Ukraine, but also saving the personnel of Russia. And I want to remind you the phrase by famous Soviet Marshal, Red Army Marshal Malinovsky, who said, he also was the guy who, look up his actually CV. He said that if you can deal with the enemy lines by fire impact, by basically blowing them to smithereens from the distance, do it. Don't use your personnel. Otherwise, I will hold you responsible for that. That's almost exact quote from Malinowski. So this is exactly what is happening. And those people who do not understand, and there are a lot of trolls, they try to come up with all kinds of the BS that, oh yeah, they do it for 4 years. Yeah. Did you see the numbers? Yes, that's the numbers which shook the world. But again, as I already stated, you cannot explain moron that he's moron because he's moron, and that's pretty much it pretty much remains the the truism. And so this is in conclusion, this is what already people from the American business begin to talk about. Douglas Cass, he is evidently is one of the big managers of the hedge fund, one of the hedge funds. And look what he writes about, you remember? You can read it yourself. Excuse me, Mr. President, POTUS at White House, but the effing Strait of Hormuz was effing open for passage before you effing started to engage in the bombing attack of Iran. There you go. You see, people begin to understand, and yeah, what can I say? So we live in the world which is going through enormously profound change. And before I go in the conclusion, I want to stress again, I repeat it many times, I will repeat it again and again and again. What we are observing right now, we are observing the last salvos of the World War II. And those people who do not understand, I will repeat it again. It was the Soviet Union, the blood of the Soviet people, sacrifice, which actually destroyed Nazi military machine and thus gave the world, especially Western civilization, the breathing room, which is naturally for 75 years it screwed it up so badly that it is the end of the West as we know it. And so this is what I wanted to tell you guys today. And as always, those who like what I do, please subscribe to my channel, and those who can afford, please support me on Patreon or buy me a coffee and two. So what can I say? Have a nice rest of the week, and I'll talk to you later, guys. Bye bye.